Alrighty, welcome in everybody. It is Friday morning, finishing out the first week of July here. It's July 7th, 2023. And we're going to go ahead and do a quick review about what we talked about yesterday and see what happened here with the market. And then we'll go into the pre-market for this morning. So going all the way back to the open yesterday, remember what we talked about. There were some decent signs from the hourly and the 4-hour from the overnight low that if they were to follow through, we were expecting the market to attempt to bounce back up. If they could not hold from the overnight low and the bears pushed us through there and it wasn't going to be just a little peak below and bounce back up, we were bears down into some of the support levels below. Right, we talked about the 50% of last week being an important kind of line in the sand here for, our bias. And then we talked about there being our scaffolding down below, the major, or at least one of the important fibs down below there, right around 44.18. And then if they got through there, that pocket where I believe we made our bounce a week ago or whatever, down here around 43.84 to 87, right? So that's what we were looking at. And when the market opened, let's go over to the New York Open, which I could have sworn I had marked on here. Let me copy this over. Give me 1 second. 76. So the market opened and basically just started to sell off, right? So the bulls obviously were not going to hold the overnight low. And let's go ahead and zoom this back up so we can actually see the screen. So the market opened, it kind of just was a little sideways there, and a couple minutes after the open, they just went right through it. And it was a nice sharp cut right through that potential level of support. And then from there, they started to sell the market off. So let's look at the sell-off here. First of all, they came right to 50% of last week. And again, ducked a couple ticks below it and got this pop. So there's a really nice reaction right off that first level we had on our charts yesterday. Bounced up and then, interestingly enough, failed right off the 200 moving average. There is that textbook retracement right back into the 200 for the market to fail. And once it failed off the 200, what happened? We held the FMA. We held the FMA. We came down, and then the bears held 50% of the previous day, nearly to the tick here. Again, getting a couple ticks pushed through it, 2 or 3 ticks. And then from there, again, rode the FMA all the way down throughout the whole first half hour of the open. So plenty of opportunity. Once you saw the bears bring the market through the low where we were looking for a potential hold for a bounce higher, you could have jumped in on the bearish side of things, especially as we continued to come lower. That was a great opportunity off the 200. And again, taking shorts off of the FMA gave you opportunities with very, very limited risk. And you could have rode nearly the whole move down. Okay, so some great opportunities here yesterday. That beautiful hold off the 200. We got another beautiful hold off the 200 as the market continued to sell off. And then it held again and again and again and again. Okay, so no excuses here yesterday. We were obviously selling off. We obviously did not just duck through the level we were expecting to hold for the bullish case and come back up through it. We just started to sell off. So you had plenty of opportunity to get short on this move. And then where did we bounce? Interestingly enough, about 4 or 5 ticks in front of the first retracement. Right? So remember, we talked about 44.18, putting it on our charts there being the next level if they could get through our scaffolding. And so they bounced again. I think it was 4 or 5, maybe 6 ticks in front of the major retracement that we were watching down here. And then that was it. The bulls jumped back in and tried to push the market higher. So from that point, we got the rotation back up. And as the market went back up, what do you know? Here's that deeper pullback later in the morning, right to the 200 and the VWAP there. Again, it was 1 tick in front. It bounced. It came back and held the 200 again for an opportunity to get long here towards the end of the day. All right, and then the whole time the market was getting this really strong push out, it held the fast moving average pretty much for the entire morning here, with maybe a couple ticks of a break, and rode it all the way up. We got a pullback right off VWAP, and then it continued to ride the whole thing up, right? So if you didn't find an opportunity yesterday, I don't know what you were doing. There were plenty of extremely low risk opportunities, and these are things we talked about in our weekly study session, our weekly webinar. Finding trades off the 200, finding trades off the fast moving average when you start to get into a strong push. So really just unbelievable action yesterday. And then finally, where did the market bounce to and find its high at the end of the day? Right off the retracement. So I want to talk about this retracement, and then we're going to go ahead and get into our pre-market for this morning. So this retracement up here that we essentially peaked into again by a couple ticks, pulled back from, and then held nearly to the tick for 3 tests at the last hour of the day here. That retracement, let's go ahead and pull up the bigger chart so we can see the higher, see the bigger picture here. And what did I tell you yesterday before we opened? I told you about the fib retracement from the high at 44.98 down to the low we made in the overnight session, right? And that was that low yesterday that we said if it doesn't hold and the bears do get through that low of the overnight session there and it comes down lower, we have to redraw our fib, right? I specifically told you guys to do this. I spent a minute on it. If the market does push lower, which would be one possibility yesterday if they couldn't hold that low, we need to redraw the fib and bring it to whatever low it gets to. So by about 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific, which would have been around noon Eastern, you would have seen we pushed all the way down to this new low, again bouncing 6 ticks, 1.5 points in front of the major retracement we had on our chart. And you should have drawn your fib all the way down to that new low, especially when you saw this nice recovery. It started to come back. We got an obvious hook in the market. It was coming all the way back up into VWAP. You should have redrawn your fib. If you would have done that, and let me go pull this 60-minute back over. If you would have done that, well, what do you know? Not only did we come up and hold, so we came up and held right off the 38% retracement there, right? So the 38 was basically the high of the morning there. And if you look, that's that line you see here on the short time frame, right? So literally right to it. Again, pulled back and held the 200, right? Came down into the close of, actually, no, I got to bring this back. Down into the 200 and then went sideways here at the end of the day holding the 38 retrace, right? So again, just as a quick summary, the market did not hold the level we wanted to see the bulls to hold for the bounce. So coming down, you could have gotten plenty of bearish opportunities, again, to the tick nearly off the 200 on the whole sell-off. Nice bounce off the 50% of the previous week, a nice failure right off 50% of the previous week. Once it got through the scaffolding, came up to the back end of it along with the 200 here and held it to the downside. And then once the market started to break its trend lower, when it broke this high right here and it was making higher highs and higher lows, you had nearly endless opportunities to get long off the FMA with, 2 or 3 ticks of risk the whole way. And you could have rode this all the way up and then again gotten out of your longs right off the 38, because you never know right around these major retracements if this exact type of situation is going to occur. And we're not going to be able to get through that major retracement area. And sure enough, we couldn't, right? They peaked through, went sideways at the end of the day, and that brings us into this morning. So throughout the Globex session last night, the market has just kind of been chopping around. And then right here, you see this hold here at the VWAP for this bounce. This was the news event, the jobs report that came out in the pre-market. So that right around, so it was 5:30 Pacific, what is that, 8:30 Eastern. Nice pop And then we came right back down into the overnight range again. So not much going on with that. And that brings us into our pre-market for this morning. So let me pull up our higher time frames.